Becoming an executor, the moment that happens is when the person dies. And you might be aware of that moment because they have died at home with you present or with family members present, or in a hospice or hospital. But there are other scenarios where it's not clear that the death has taken place. Discovering the death or confirming the death and knowing that it's happened is really the beginning of becoming the person who is in charge after that death. So in my case, we were getting on, living our lives. My dad was in the UK, I was in a different country. He was out and about in London that day, and I spoke to him in the afternoon, and I was used to speaking to him every couple of days. When I called him a couple of days later, I didn't get through, which is not unusual, but usually he would call back within a couple of hours. And I found it really strange that he didn't call back, but not so strange that I thought anything had happened. Tried him a few times and then got on with my work that day. It was sort of in the back of my mind. And then I got a message from his partner, which is relatively rare, to say that she also hadn't heard from him. I called her immediately and was like, let's compare when we really last heard from him. And my overwhelming feeling was to say, right, let us not jump to conclusions of the worst case scenario, because he's an active, youthful man in his 70s who could be anywhere in the UK, could have gone to Spain. In fact, in my mind, I thought he's probably gone to Preston to look at trams, and he doesn't have his phone charger with him. And we kind of made a plan that I would send her my keys in the post to go and get into his flat to see what was going on. When I got off the phone, I started thinking through the number of days, and it started sounding like way too many days. I tried to contact him every possible way. Contacted everyone I knew who would be in contact with him to see, has someone spoken to him more recently than us? Across the board, there had been nothing. And this all started to point in certain directions, but I thought, come on, what is going on here? Must be able to work this out. So I Googled, what do you do if you can't contact someone on their phone? And what came up was missing persons websites on police websites. And I thought, this is not a missing person. This is just someone who isn't picking up their phone. I was sort of slipping in work and trying to work out what was going on with all of this. Time was moving on, and eventually I just called the local police and said, I don't know whether I'm totally overreacting, and I'm sorry if I'm wasting your time. I haven't been able to contact my dad for the last couple of days. Haven't heard anything from him, and usually we speak every couple of days. I'm out of the country. Is there any way that you would be able to go round and knock on his door and see whether he is there? And to my utter amazement, they said, yes, we'll go round and we'll check on him, and if he's in, we will ask him to give you a ring back. And I was so elated by this that I just gave his address and nearly put the phone down. Just before I did, they said, but if he doesn't respond to us knocking on the door, then we will break in. I think my actual response was, no way, you cannot do that, because what if he is in Preston looking at trams and he gets back having lost his phone, and there's police tape all over the door because I've asked the police to break into his flat. They made a really good point. Firstly, I had alerted them to my concern for the welfare of someone, and in this case, a door can be replaced, but there is a chance, they said, that your father is on the other side of that door and he needs our help. From the moment I called the police, I was just shaking non-stop. I said, yeah, okay, let's do this then. And later they called me to say that they had gone round, they had knocked on his door, there hadn't been an answer, and they had broken in, and he had in fact died at home. And my overwhelming feeling was utter gratitude that they had done this incredible thing for me and my dad and my family. The reason I'm saying this is that we can imagine that we know exactly when someone dies. but actually maybe it takes some working out. And that moment that someone dies is actually the moment at which we become their executor. So really, becoming an executor, in my eyes, means knowing enough about the person's life to know when things change so that we know when their death has taken place. The responsibility that falls on you as an executor or an administrator is unlike anything I have ever felt. It's a really big job at an extraordinary and life-changing time, with many things that can trip you up along the way. Discovering the death or confirming the death and knowing that it's happened is really the beginning of becoming the person who is in charge after that death.